On this episode of Still Loading, we say hello to my little friend.
Excuse me?
Hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Still Loading, the 40 for 40 series. Oh my gosh, we were just talking about that off mic. Not the 40 for 40 series. The summer of PlayStation 2 is in full swing, and today we are talking about Grand Theft Auto Vice City. And the person who requested this game for this list is my buddy James from the Know Geeks Allowed podcast. James, how are you doing today?
I am very excited to talk about this game because it is an awful, awful game, and it's for sinners.
Dude, actually, before we get into this, before we dive in, because I actually had a story about Grand Theft Auto, I literally just remembered now. But as I've been doing with this series, I've been asking every one of my guests, what is their earliest memory with the PlayStation 2? Since we're doing a big PS2 nostalgia fest, I always like to see, how did you first get introduced to the system? What are some of your earliest memories? Things of that nature.
Sure. I remember I got it for Christmas. I think the year it came out, maybe the year after. I have to look to see when the year it came out and how old I was. But I do remember at the time my sister, she got like a really good job right out of high school, working for a pharmaceutical company. And so my sister was kind of rolling in it. She was living at home still. So needless to say, I got some kick-ass presents from my sister come birthday and Christmas. And one Christmas morning, I came downstairs and there was a PS2 sitting there for me. And it might have been the year after because I remember I had a handful of games already. I got to open up like 4 or 5 games. I think I had like Simpsons Hit and Run was one of the games in there. And
Okay.
And I just fell in love with that system. I mean, I had this battle with myself all the time. It's either the N64 or the PS2 is like my favorite system, just depending on my mood or what game we're talking about. But from a financial standpoint or collection standpoint, PS2, I think I had close to like 300 games at one point.
Dear God, dude.
My sister played games too, so it wasn't necessarily just my collection personally. But between the two of us, we had close to like 300 games. I mean, and that was back in the day. I mean, we just we played them and beat them like that, and we were able to trade them in and stuff like that for the most part. But I actually kept most of my PS2 games. I just like the way they sat on the shelf. It was like the first games that just sat like DVDs. So like, I got to appreciate the collection in my own house. And I'm surprised I never really got into collecting video games. But I remember I loved just looking at my shelf of PS2 games. Like all the things are on the spines, and they're easier to read than like the PS1 games, like the jewel cases, stuff like that. But they just that sound of opening up a PS2. I love that sound. I still love that sound. Like it's a DVD case too, but whatever. But just that, I love that sound. Like you had a little spot to put your memory card in. I remember just having to delete stuff on your memory card because like, oh, man, it's 8 megabits, man. And you had to get like extra memory cards and.
They had like the double ones, like 16 megabit memory cards.
Yeah, just everything about it. Just the amount of like peripherals that came with it. PS2 was so in your face, at least at like the local game stores and like all the toy stores and stuff when I was a kid. To me, it was like more prolific than Nintendo was. Nintendo was just great and it stayed great and will always be great. But then there was like this new guy. Like PS1 was very not on my radar as a kid. Didn't really care. I was happy with the N64. Had no interest in PlayStation. PlayStation 2 came out. It was just so much more like, this is like, because we didn't really have like a gaming computer as a kid, so I always played video games, like computer games at friends' houses. PS2 was like the big boy system is what it felt like. This is what the older kids play, and it was just, I don't know. I mean, it just everything about it was just fantastic. Like the catalog had something for everybody. It wasn't tailored to anybody. PS2 is just I'm talking about. I might have to. PS2 is definitely the best system. Has something for everybody. I mean,
that's why it's the same thing. I did that episode about what is my favorite console, and I came to the similar conclusion. I just I did it as quote unquote scientifically as I possibly could, where I just would look at each generation and be like, all right, what's my favorite console from this generation? What's my favorite console from this generation? So on and so forth. And then I would look at all that, and I would compare and contrast, and I ended up with the PS2. But no, you're right. And Nintendo's had had an issue with that label of theirs, that they're kind of the kiddie system, and they, especially in the starting with the Genesis tried to label themselves as for older gamers. This is like the cool console that older gamers would play, or the adults would play, or something like that. Had more mature titles. I mean, you look no further than freaking Mortal Kombat, where they had blood on theirs and Super Nintendo did not.
Yeah.
And then you go on to the PlayStation, and it was a similar thing. Like, there's advertisements from PlayStation with like Crash Bandicoot like taunting Nintendo of America, standing outside just like with a megaphone, dude dressed in a Crash suit just screaming at them, just kind of yelling like, "You like games?" or I forget what he said, or something like that.
Probably like a groin grab in there.
Like what a hot, like not hostile, what an aggressive marketing like strategy that they went with, and it worked because the PlayStation was a huge success. It sold better than the N64. And so when it got to the PS2, it's no surprise that it kind of felt that way, and that's when Nintendo also started shifting, because the GameCube was when they had, Resident Evil 4 for that. And that was it wasn't exclusive for a while, then it came over to other consoles, but for a long while it was exclusive to the GameCube. So Nintendo was trying to reverse that mentality of them just being like a kiddie console. Like, no, look, we have this super violent horror game. Look at all this gore. I'm sure there was other games involved with that too, but the PlayStation 2, I had a similar thing. My uncle had one. I think I mentioned it on the first episode of the Summer PS2, but I don't remember now. No, I don't think I did. My uncle had one, and I remember playing Medal of Honor Frontline at his house, but it was the demo of it back when demo discs were still a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And that game just blew me out of the water. Now I go back, and it's very hard to play. The graphics don't hold up. The controls don't hold up.
No, definitely not.
But, not every PS2 game is like that. And to kind of bridge into Vice City is like a 50-50 thing with me in terms of how it holds up. Like, I think elements of it holds up. Like, I actually don't think the controls are all that awful. There's some problems with it. There's, like, the controls are bad for modern sensibilities, but they weren't that hard to figure out. So that's why I kind of put it as like a 50-50. But then the other thing is, like, the mission designs were very dated, but at the same time, what can you expect? It's a game from I probably should have written this down. It came out in 2002.
Yeah.
So it's, you're looking at an 18-year-old game right now, almost 18-year-old, be 18 years old. It'll be a legal adult on October 29th.
Then I can play it again. I'll celebrate. No, I definitely get what you're saying, though. The only thing I think it does, it's definitely dated. Its design and, story aside, its controls, they're definitely dated. But the only thing I do remember enjoying about it, even from playing other games of that era, their camera system worked. There's so many games that even come after this game in other consoles, even like PS3 generation, where they still didn't figure out how to fucking handle a third person camera, and it's just. I don't think Vice City is by any means like the fucking pinnacle, but at the time, I couldn't tell you the difference between a good camera and a bad camera. But retroly playing it, I played it a couple of months ago. I was like, this is not bad. I was frustrated for a lot of missions, but not necessarily because of the camera, more or less just the design of the game itself.
Same. The cam. That's a really good observation, because I remember when I was sitting down to give the game a shot. And full disclosure to all the listeners, I did not beat this one. I did play a chunk of it. I watched some online videos. I read up on the story, but I got a gist of everything. I got a gist of how the game plays, and that's also why I bring these experts on, because, well, I put expert in quotations. No offense, James. No.
Whoa! I got a PhD in hooker punching, so I got it from this game.
A PhD in GTA.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Well, hooker punching is a little bit more direct. I mean,
I minored in that. I minored in hooker punching.
You minored in hooker punching. But I bring people on like you, so that way people have a good amount of experience with the game, so that way I can rely on you to pick up the slack where I just don't know it. Now, with that said, I agree with you with the camera controls, because I remember when I was tinkering around with it, I think to move the camera left and right, you hit R1 and L1. Like, it was weird that you didn't use one of the joysticks. If I remember correctly, it's been a minute, so maybe I'm off with that.
Yeah, I don't remember. But I remember it definitely. I hope I remember this. It definitely had, I think, it had like a reset camera function. If your shit got too silly. I hope I'm not mistaken that between that and San Andreas, because I know the one of them had it, because I know GTA 3 didn't. I don't think it did have it, because I remember just you turn your camera too much and you get that, you just cut through fucking everything.
So here it is. It's you can left analog stick / D-pad moves the character around. You can look around with the right analog stick, but only when standing still.
Yes. Yeah.
So it kind of works because the camera did a pretty good job at following you. But yeah, but like I was saying, that's the 50-50 part. It's like, you got it half right. Why couldn't you just let me control the camera all the time?
Yeah, I wonder when that mechanic, the dual camera, first person shooters kind of had it on lock when you just, one obviously strafes and, moves you forward and stuff like that. Just wonder when the first third person team got together, it's like, what would really not suck if we could just control the camera a lot better.
I mean, but that even didn't really exist until freaking Halo. Halo was the one that really revolutionized that control scheme and kind of made it the standard. So until then, it really wasn't. You didn't have that freedom of control with your cameras. So this only came out a year after Halo. So there was no way they were going to be able to change the control scheme on the fly. But yeah, so it's taken a long time for game controls to get as streamlined as they are now, but here we are.
When I'm mowing down civilians, I just need my camera to be flawless. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I'm on the sidewalk just running over grandma and everybody else is in my fucking way, so I go get some new guns in the game. I need my camera to be flawless. 9 out of 10. It would have been perfect.
Let's dive into this then. So let's use that as our first jumping off point, the controversy surrounding this game.
Oh yeah.
The Grand Theft Auto series in general has so much controversy surrounding it. I remember the story I was going to talk about with this game specifically is I remember a neighbor who lived down the road from me. I don't remember his last name. I wouldn't say his last name, but his first name was John, which is, the most as generic as possible, but that's actually his name.
Looking at you, John, you piece of shit. Sorry, John.
He had this game. And I remember going over to his house and playing it, and I've always been such a goody-goody, so I remember watching him play it. I'm like, oh, my mom said I can't play this game. He's like, well, you don't have to play. You can just watch me play. And I'm like, I don't know if I should. And I remember I ran home and I told my mom, I saw it was playing Grand Theft. I mean, she didn't get him in trouble. She wasn't like that.
Oh, yeah.
She wasn't going to get the kid in trouble. It was more just I was such a goody. Oh my god, this is such an embarrassing story, dude. In thinking of that, I remember when I was a kid. Just this is how much of a goody I was, and to an extent still am. When I was a kid, we would rent movies from the library.
Did you tell your mom you're recording an episode about Vice City? Are you going to record after?
No,
my buddy James came on, and we talked about Vice City, Mom.
No, actually, when I bought Vice City for the PS2, after the fact, 2 or 3 years or 4 years ago, I was still living with more than that. I'm sorry. I was still living with my parents 5 years ago, so I was 25, 24, and I picked them up on eBay, and she was mad I bought them. I'm 25. I was like, are you kidding me?
Mom ain't having that shit, bro.
No, it was awful. But so we would rent movies from the library, right? And I believe this was after Blockbuster closed down, or actually no, it wasn't. But we realized that the library was $4 cheaper, and you could get the movies longer.
Oh yeah, they got. If anybody out there doesn't know that, that's still a thing you can still do. Libraries have massive collections that they receive through donations. Support your library. That shit is awesome. So not just a shout out to the libraries, but.
And it just gives you a much more eclectic selection of movies that you wouldn't see on a streaming service or something like that, or you didn't know to look for, because that's kind of the downside of streaming services and digital marketplaces. You can't just be walking down an aisle and be like, "What the fuck's this?" And
there's no inkling to search for certain things. You don't know what to look for. So if you're ever just in that mood for something, just go check out your local library. It's like I said, you get a membership, or whatever. But so what? You're supporting America's best thing we got going for us. Okay, we got
and it's
library.
Free, so it's not the rentals, but getting the membership is free. So we rented a movie that she liked called Doc Hollywood. It's a Michael J. Fox movie, and it's just about this Hollywood doctor that goes to this bumblefuck and becomes the doctor there and falls in love with someone. It's a cute rom-com type of movie, and I remember my mom saying "Oh, this is a cute movie. I think you'd like it." So she rented it for us. Well, she apparently saw the TV version of the movie, because there's a scene where a woman comes out of the lake just completely naked.
Nice.
buck ass naked, and I was such a goody, I turned it off. I was like, my mom doesn't want me to see that. and,
my man.
And I told her, I was like, Mom, there was boobies, and I didn't say that that bluntly. I was like, she was naked. And my mom was like, what? Are you serious? And I'm so embarrassed to tell that story because it's like, what teenage kid? I wasn't quite a teenager. I was probably like,
I thought you were telling this when you were 25. I was like, buddy, we need to put this on a different show where you need help because
I know, right? Let's go talk to a therapist. No, I think I was probably like in between 11 and 13 or something like that. So. And, remember, like, when I was 11, 13, that was, like, 2002. Not even. That was, like, I was 11 in 2000. So it would have been, like, 2000 to 2002. So we didn't really have the internet. So it's not like I had my sexual awakening yet by, like, stumbling on something online that I shouldn't have. You know what I mean?
Sexual awakening.
What?
Vice City done did you dirty, man.
No, this game didn't do that. Come on. Polygons, no thank you.
Whoa, you gonna tell me Laura Croft's fucking triangle fucking torpedoes didn't do it for you as a kid? Come on, man. Everybody was trying to get them fucking pyramids.
The pyramids.
Look at those geezers.
Oh my god.
Actually, it never did it for me as a kid. I always thought it was even gross as a kid.
Oh, dude, like it's the same thing where like, what is it? Game like Leisure Suit Larry. I never played those games, but I remember like hearing about them, and when I was like growing up, it's like, oh, I wonder what they're like, because you're curious about as a kid growing up, going through puberty, and then I looked up videos of it later on. I'm like, why would anyone find this sexy?
Nah, I never did it for me. Like those kids that beat off the cartoons, like I don't know about you guys. Everybody's got their own thing, but I ain't having that shit. I ain't having that shit.
But anyway, so. Yeah, I was a goody, and I did weird. I'm still surprised that I did that. Like any normal boy would have been like, "Oh my god, she wanted me to watch this, and she doesn't know there's boobs in it." But I was such a goody. I'm like, "Mom." Yeah,
I remember trying to play this, and I remember there was no really when it came out. Like the controversy hasn't really hit yet. But my mom, we had GTA 3 when that came out because that came out like a year beforehand. So I had that. My mom played that game. It was just she just saw it the way I saw it. It's just a game. She was pretty confident in her job that I wasn't going to go around trying to emulate any of this shit, which I didn't. But times I wanted to, sitting in traffic, I was like, you know what, I could just go beat that guy to death. But I mean, the funny thing is, like prior to that though, like playing fighting games, like I had a huge N64 collection and just other PS2 games in general, but. If it was like a fighting game, like Mortal Kombat, stuff like that, like my mom would make me turn off the blood if that was an option. She didn't want that, like, fatalities and stuff like that were just, no blood. For like I rented a game from Blockbuster or whatever video store, and if I would tell like, oh, most games had the option to turn off blood back in the day for other systems and stuff like that. But if like it didn't have it, my mom would like evaluate the game at that spot, and then we'd have to return it if it was like too much or something like that. But lo and behold, like a couple years later, GTA comes out, but again, it's a difference, being like 8 and 12, but there's definitely some maturity differences. But I still remember, like, my mom be like, can you turn the blood off? Or if I can make it green. I think some Mortal Kombat games, you could turn the blood green, or other fighting games.
Like, that would make a difference.
I guess because it's like, yeah, I get it. Really just the gratuitous violence at a certain point. But I do remember my mom playing GTA 3 and Vice City. My mom definitely liked Vice City because, she lived through the 80s. Just my mom hammering in the cheat codes and just getting an infinite everything just so she can just go fuck around in the sand. I don't think she ever completed one mission, but she just like them driving mechanics. That's a huge why I love the sandbox games that in all the clones of GTA's. Just the plethora of cars and just you make it your own. Like you don't have to play the game. Like you could just do what you want. And I always like that guy. I always like even today I still play games like that where you just. The best bang for your buck is that replay value where I can make it my own. And back then when you had an imagination, you set up little forts and you just crash cars like a little kid in a sandbox, you know what I mean? And that's what I treated it as. It wasn't like, oh, I got to go do drugs. I want to be like Tommy Vercetti. And I was like, no, it's just a sandbox with my action figures. That's how I looked at it. And I think that's how my mom knew I looked at it. So that's how I think I got like to get away with playing this game when I was like 11 or 12.
Well, there's also, like, there was a study done, I forget, my game design teacher in college told me about this, where a bunch of people who didn't really know much about games played Grand Theft Auto, and all they did was they got in a car and followed the traffic laws. They would stop at stoplights, go at green lights, and just kind of drive around, get out, like park in proper spaces.
Oh yeah,
like,
I did that. Yeah, that's fun.
Like, and it was kind of like, it was meant to be a test to show, listen, this game doesn't encourage any type of violence. Like, if you don't, they're trying to make it as realistic as possible. Like, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. The game's not telling you to go and do this. I mean, I understand it is in terms of the missions, but it's not, generally the missions aren't having you kill civilians. They're having you go after other gangsters or other mobsters or something like that. And I mean, it's pretty much, we mentioned it off mic, but it's pretty much, this whole game is pretty much just a Scarface clone.
Oh, big time.
Sort of.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Just some real quick stuff on its controversies, though. Vice City had a ton. One of the bigger ones was basically there's two gangs in here, and they were the Haitians and I forget
Cubans.
what the other one, the Cubans.
Yeah.
And there was a big controversy. Basically, a bunch of Haitian activists were mad because it depicted Haitians as quote unquote thugs, thieves, and drug dealers. And in response, Rockstar issued, I'm reading this off of Wikipedia, Rockstar issued a press release apologizing and acknowledging the concern, but insisted that the violence should be taken within the context of the game, which also contains violence towards other ethnic groups.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And it's a funny thing is like, I vaguely remember this when it happened, but one of the things I do think now that, maybe people can take away from now is like, oh, 20 years ago you got to get away with shit. No, you didn't. Even 20 years ago, when you crossed the line that people thought you were crossing the line, there were repercussions for it. So just a little food for thought, you guys out there, that like, oh, I used to be able to do this when I was a kid. Sure you did, but there's, again, if you do things a certain way, but you can make a movie like this too, but movies are beginning to end script, and it's semantics a little bit, a little gray area with this, but I mean, I get it. I mean, you really you didn't show like one good Haitian. Like every Haitian in the game was a gang member, so it was like there's no wiggle room that they tried to they left themselves. Yeah. It was just like, oh, there's the Haitians. Okay, he's a gang member. And lo and behold, you kill him. He drops like a gun and some packet. You know what I mean? It wasn't. Yeah. They didn't really try.
So that's a fair point. So it's like no matter, everyone who was a Haitian in this game was bad, no matter what. So all right, that is pretty fair. I'm not even making any like commentary over like the validity of the lawsuits. Like especially this is from 2003. There was in newer versions of the game they did take out any mention of the Haitians versus the Cubans. Yeah, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Well, here's what I think it's funny about that was Vice City is a fictional city, but then you took like a real ethnic group and made them and like villainized them in a way. So to me, if there was like, oh, this is Miami and there's Haitian gangs, fine, it's plausible, but it's weird to take like a fictional city and then introduce like an actual demographic of people and then be like, hey, these guys are the bad guys. That's kind of fucked up. This is a fake city. Why they gotta be called Haitians? Why couldn't you make up another fucking
why could it just be like make a name for the gang? It didn't have to be an ethnicity.
Again, I didn't think of that at the time, but when playing the game and then going through my own notes, I just like, that's kind of fucked up. It's everything's fake, and then it's like New York City's not even New York City, but you still got like evil Haitians. It's like, come on, man. Like the Jamaicans, and I think GTA 3 had the same issue. I think GTA 3 was also sued because there's like Jamaican gangs in that version. So they didn't even like learn their lesson. I mean, the games are a year apart. But still, like
Rockstar just courts controversy. They don't shy away from it.
Definitely not.
And I just the big scary thing, especially like I've said before, I'm Christian. I grew up very Christian, and my parents were very it was frowned upon to read Harry Potter because there was witchcraft in it, like that shit like that. And when this game came out, like that's all they would hear about is like, oh, you just you kill hookers and like you said, or like we were joking around off mic, like do cocaine and shit like that, get some blow.
Yeah, this whole game. I mean, that's like it's a weird culture they cultivated with their namesake.
Exactly. Well, and what was funny is that when I went over to that kid's house, that John's house that I was talking about, I still remember he got a hooker in the car. They did their thing. You just saw the car rocking, and then you saw the money go down. And then after she got out, he just got out, beat her to death, and took the money back. And I'm
Damn right.
Holy shit.
She probably overcharged. I get it. That's a real life application, people. If you get overcharged, just beat him to death.
For a prostitute.
No, anything. Fuck it. You fucking overcharged me for a cheeseburger at McDonald's. There's going to be consequences. Not saying I'm going to beat you to death. I'm just saying, like, you don't know.
I was going to say that's some ominous thing some ominous warnings for a cheeseburger.
Bitch, I said no cheese. I wanted a hamburger. When I say extra pickles, you just put one on there. I get you think that's extra, but that's not extra. Now I'm getting myself mad. I'm about to go fight somebody. Damn you, Vice City.
It's what it was teaching us, man. It was just teaching us from a young age. No, so some of the other ones, there was a 18-year-old who shot and killed two Alabamian, police officers, and when he was basically in his statements to police, he said life is like a video game. Everybody's got to die sometime. And even though, as far as I can tell, at least on this Wikipedia article, it doesn't mention how Grand Theft Auto was related. It just seems like since he mentioned video game, they're just like Grand Theft Auto. Yep. It's got to be that, and just kind of pinned it on that. And yeah, there's a couple. There's two other lawsuits as well besides the two that we already mentioned. It's just the game courted a lot of controversy. It was actually what is it, in Australia? It was going to receive like a super like severe rating or whatever, and then they had to pre-edit it to receive an MA15 classification, and then an uncensored version was released in the region in 2010, retaining its class. That's weird.
Yeah,
I'm kind of confused by this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that just has to stem with they had like I guess like, you know how like movies get screened or whatever, and then they kind of keep that director's cut on hand. Yeah, I guess maybe there's like you can't try and sell it. I don't know how it works. I'm just speculating. I don't know. Well,
shit. Australia is notoriously strict with their their version of the MPAA, or not the MPAA. That's for movies, but the ESRB. Their version of the ESRB is super strict with their ratings and everything. But anyway, let's dive into the story now. This story, it's relatively simple, not to say that there's not a lot of like intricacies with it, but it's a pretty straightforward plot. You play as the character Tommy Vercetti, who is a mobster working for the Forellis, the Forelli family. He gets out of prison after a 15-year stint there for murder, and his boss, Sonny Fiorelli, wants to establish drug operations in Vice City, so he sends Tommy to oversee a drug deal, and the drug deal goes awry, and the drugs go missing, the drugs get stolen, and I believe who gets killed? One of his friends gets killed.
So Lance Vance. Is that his name? I think the guy's name's Lance Vance. He's like your side cohort throughout the whole game for most of the game, I should say. Yes. Lance Vance. His brother I think gets killed. So he pretty much like, so you're back against the wall because Sonny, the deal went south, and all signs pointing to you kind of fucked it up a bit. So you kind of got to redeem yourself. So Lance Vance's brother dies. So you kind of have like a partner. It's like, this wasn't my fault. Shit went south. You know what I mean? The other mobsters. So he kind of like, you guys are like bound by like different roads to the same place.
Yeah.
That's how you kind of form. You get a sidekick, and he kind of shows you the ropes because he's been in Vice City the whole time. So he's like almost your tutorial friend. Kind of shows you the ropes, shows you like, hey, this game has boats and shit like that.
You can't swim in this, right? Like,
no,
if you fall off
die.
the boat, you're dead.
Yeah, just like the first one, you fall off the boat, you die. You don't swim to the third one, or well, not the third one, but San Andreas. That's when you can swim and shit.
Really, that's when you first start to swim.
Yeah, you get to swim, work, and actually, it's a stat. Like the more you swim, like your guy gets like buffer, and his cardio goes up, and he gets stronger, and it actually like plays into how the game works and shit like that, and.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that game turned into a full RPG. It's a good game, but Vice City to me is it's that 80s stank that I like. That all my favorite movies came from the 80s, and it's just this one takes place in 86. I think the game said.
Yes, 86.
Just a little fun fact: some other movies that came out in the real life in 86: Top Gun, Ferris Bueller, Howard the Duck, The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. That's a great movie. And then Big Trouble in Little China, which is my favorite movie, also came out in this fictional 86. So I wish I could play this game with a mod where I can go watch Big Trouble Little China. As Tommy
that would be awesome. If it's like, if they did, how like Fortnite has movies in Fortnite now, if they did like a GTA Battle Royale thing, but in the 80s, so you can watch 80s movies in Vice City.
Hell yeah. I'd be all about that. That'd be cool.
That'd actually be pretty dope. I was saying before we recorded that I'm pretty sure this was one of the first games or just any form of media, not the first, but one of the first that really started to be like, hey man, weren't the 80s great? The earliest one I can think of is The Wedding Singer, Adam Sandler's The Wedding Singer.
Oh yeah, that's a good, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a good
I
point.
like that movie a lot.
I really enjoy that movie. That was like towards the end of his hate. I don't shit on Adam Sandler. I like some of his newer movies as well, but that was like started to go down a bit in the Adam Sandler catalog. Yeah. But I think the bar was set too high with his earlier movies, so it's not fair to compare between like Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison. But Wedding Singer was an awesome movie with his Julia Gould was the name of the Drew Barrymore's character.
Julia. Yeah, she was going to be Julia.
Yeah, that's
Goulia.
What it was. Yeah, I still remember that joke. Like he just did, like, "You're gonna be Julia Goulia," and I still hear it in my head. It's just those kind of jokes, and that's I don't know. The '80s, just all the '80s jokes are just stanky and delicious.
I love it. I mean, it's the '80s thing. I mean, now it's kind of winding down with the '80s nostalgia. I mean, that's pretty much how it all goes. If you look. It's like a 30-year thing. Like 90s nostalgia is hitting it right now. Like 90s nostalgia is going to really hit this decade, in all honesty, because it's pretty much like every 30 years. Because if you notice, like a lot of movies in the 80s, they took place in the 50s. Yeah, and that's because that was 30 years prior. Everyone was reminiscing about the 50s. I mean, even think about. What is it? Stand By Me. I think that
also came out this year.
50s. That came out in '86. There we go. That's just how the kind of like the nostalgia cycle goes, pretty much. I mean, to be fair, it is kind of weird. I mean, I shouldn't take credit for that observation. I heard it from somewhere else. It might have been Retronauts. It might have been somewhere else.
How dare you let me compliment you then? How dare you? I wasted a good old compliment on you. How dare you?
But no, like the freaking. It's weird. I've said this before. I love the 80s, and it's just super weird to me because I was born in '89, so I'm not really an 80s kid.
I'm the same way.
But I have so much nostalgia for just 80s everything, the 80s music, 80s TV.
Yep, I'm the same way. Like, I mean, again, this one is Miami Vice and Scarface smashed together. The guy who even voices Lance Vance is the one of the detectives in Miami Vice, the guy who, spoiler, he betrays his partner
at the end of the game.
Yeah. Oh, and in Miami Vice,
and in the show, in the movie or the show.
The show. I never seen the movie.
Really?
Yeah. Ricardo Tubbs. That's the character he plays. I don't remember the actor's name, but the detective Ricardo Tubbs.
I need to Tubbs. I need to watch that show then, because like I love 80. Like in Miami Vice is such like an 80s. Glory fest.
Oh yeah, it's on suits with fucking shoulder pads and like just plastic suits, like Eddie Murphy had that purple suit when he did that one comedy special.
You can watch it on the NBC app for free. It's also on Amazon Prime and Hulu, but I have a sneaking suspicion you need a Starz subscription for that, because whenever I see Starz and Amazon Prime as something as a subscription option for that, I'm like, you probably need to get Starz with it. That's what it usually is. Yeah. It's usually like Amazon Prime with the Starz add-on or some shit like that, which is annoying as hell. But anyway, so the story of the game, we kind of talked about the setup, how the drug deal went awry, and now he's having to work his way back up. And pretty much the majority of the game is up until like a kind of like a halfway point. Is the majority of the game is Tommy trying to gain ground and kind of gain his footing in the drug world in Vice City or Miami. It's pretty much Miami.
Yeah, you essentially like that revenge thing kind of takes a back seat a bit because you're just trying to like build a rapport with, you're doing like odd jobs for like a bunch of people. Like that's another reason why I like these GTA games. It's just so many characters. Yeah, I mean, like, but then again, that revenge thing starts to take a back seat and it builds like a really bursting relationship with him and that Lance Vance character. It's like Lance Vance, like, yo, my brother died, and you're over here like trying to be the kingpin of Vice City. He's like, dude, I didn't forget about you, but I want to do this too. And then you start this budding almost animosity between the two, and it's really weird to have a game like as silly as this is with all of its like sex and drug and like fart jokes and stuff like that, to have like a really good tension build between like your characters. Is like, yo, I know he's gonna betray me. Like you can just smell it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Again, that's just one of the reasons I love this. To me, this game played like a movie. It was the first time I played a game that made me appreciate, like, in a movie sense, the GTA 3, the main character didn't talk. It was really hard to give a shit. I mean, it was just...
Yeah.
I mean, it was fun. I mean, the story was okay, but, your main character had said nothing. I think his name was, like, Claude or Clyde, or I forget they called him, but something stupid, but...
I think it was Clyde, but I also didn't play GTA 3.
You didn't miss out on that one. That was... They got their feet wet with that one, yeah, I mean, this game just felt like a movie. Like all the characters. I mean, like the movie. I mean, I should say it feel like a movie because like it has a huge cast of people in this. Like Ray Liotta from The Goodfellas and other shit that he did, voiced Tommy Vercetti. Tom Sizemore is your boss as Sonny Forelli. Dennis Hopper's in this. Burt Reynolds is the Avery cowboy character, who like buys up all the real estate. He's like he's that Doug Dimmadome of the Dimsdale, that guy. It's that guy in Vice City. Well, it's Gary Busey's in it. He plays an awesome character. Danny Trejo is like this. I think he's one of the Cuban gang leaders.
That's crazy. They had so many like famous people doing voices in this game.
Yeah,
like that's just wild to me.
And then, like even like back then as a kid, like I was a pretty big into movies. Not so much as I am now because I have a lot more money and free time to watch them. But just piggyback on another reason why I love the PS2 so much. It was my first DVD player. I mean, that was huge to me as a kid. Like my parents had one in the living room, but I had my own to start my own collection as a kid. And then
real quick side note, you were right. It's Claude, not Clyde, for GTA 3.
It's Claude.
It's Claude.
I knew it was something like Clyde, or I knew it was something like that. I couldn't remember which one it was. It was something.
But sorry,
silly.
yeah, you were saying it was your first DVD player as a kid.
Yeah, like it's just and to me, this felt like playing a movie. I had like Devil May Cry and it had its cinematics, which were cool, but I just wanted to slice shit. I had no investment to just give a shit about Dante and anything he was doing. I just wanted to fight demons, and it was just cool to me. But then like Vice City, I'm pretty sure I'd have to really go through like a PS2 catalog, but I know playing it was just like I couldn't wait to do the next mission. How did this character progress? How does his relationship, like Luis Guzman is like one of your antagonists in the game, and his character is so over the top. Like he's Luis Guzman. Like I don't know if you guys are familiar with Luis Guzman, but he's the same guy in everything he's in, and he's that in this game. And it's just every character is iconic in this game. It's just you just have to like look a little bit.
I'm actually gonna look up because I did see. Hold on, let me see. So yeah, Ray Liotta, like you said, is Tommy Vercetti. Where is Philip Michael Thomas is Lance Vance.
Yeah, that's the name of the actor from Miami Vice.
Yeah, they played Ricardo Tubbs. That is and it's funny because I was reading that one of the things they really went for was that same kind of dynamic between Tommy Vercetti and Lance Vance as the same dynamic in Miami Vice.
Yeah, and it shows, man.
No, it's crazy. Okay, so the guy who plays Ken Rosenberg, I don't recognize the actor. His name is William Fichtner. Maybe you recognize it.
I don't know who that is, but I know who he's based off of because it's another one of my favorite movies.
I've seen him in like if you see him, you'll recognize him. He's been in Armageddon. He's been in Black Hawk Down. He's been in a ton of different movies. Like you'll recognize him if you Google him. But what's crazier to me is they have Dennis Hopper.
Yep.
They have
he's a porn
Tom
director.
Sizemore. Tom Sizemore, which is not, he's a pretty big actor, but not, Dennis Hopper. Burt Reynolds.
Yep.
Luis Guzman, like you said. Robert Davi is in this.
He's a Bond villain.
He is.
That's all I know, man.
He's also in Die Hard. He's one
of
the
that's
Johnson
right.
agents in Die Hard.
I forgot about that.
You have Lee Majors is in this, the $6 Million Man.
Yeah, he plays a biker gang leader who's just like a Hell's Angel.
Is his character's name.
Yeah, Mitch the Bitch Baker. He plays like a tongue in cheek version of like the Hell's Angels group, and he's like this little just backwater, not like backwater kind of guy, but he's just a real dirty group of guys. Like that whole biker motif kind of thing. That's his whole shtick. But he's a cool character in that too.
That's just wild to me that they had such a ridiculously talented cast of people for a video game in 2002. Like that just, I don't know how, like Grand Theft Auto 3 must have given Rockstar a shitload of money because I cannot understand how they were able to afford Ray Liotta, Dennis Hopper, Burt Reynolds, Robert Davi, Gary Busey, Lee Majors. I mean, maybe Robert Davi isn't like one of the most well-known actors, but like he's still. I mean, they got the dude from Miami Vice, like Luis Guzman. Maybe Luis Guzman wasn't as popular at the time, but like the fact that they had Burt Reynolds, Dennis Hopper, Ray Liotta,
well, Jenna Jameson's in it too, and she was definitely popular at that time.
Who was in it?
Jenna Jameson.
Oh yeah,
the porn star.
yeah.
So I mean, she plays a porn star named Candy Sucks.
Candy Sucks, with 3 X's.
Yeah, and
of course,
and she's actually kind of funny. She's definitely like she's like a very sexualized character, but she she definitely touches on something like real world, like, hey, you should take me seriously. I also want to be an actress. I'm like, no, shut up. You're a bimbo. And like it starts to wear on her, and she starts to like sway and kind of lean towards people to help push her career forward. That doesn't require her to take her clothes off. It's pretty cool. It's a little, even again, nothing I realized when I was a kid. I was like, oh, cool, booby girl. But yeah, it was just little nods like that, like little subtle things where it's just like, hey,
they gave her an actual character arc instead of just making her the eye candy.
Yeah, instead of just being like,
the triangle candy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Got to round out them polygons.
So, but as Tommy kind of gets more of a foothold in the Vice City underworld, he pretty much at one point there's a switch that flips. I don't know if it's halfway through the game or where is it at specifically. You might be able to tell me more or tell me more accurately, but he pretty much gains complete control over Vice City's drug trade. Now, I know I've skipped a lot in terms of small missions here, not even small, but like missions in between here and there. But that's pretty much like, would you say that's the midpoint of the story or the game?
Yeah, mid to like 3/4 of the way through. You take over, like, I don't know if you played, like, there's a lot of games that do this now. I probably can't think off the top of my head, but like when you take over a zone, you kind of get, you buy property in this game, and then once you kind of like you get enough money, you buy the property, and you kind of like that's kind of your zone now. You know, it's just like it's a slow progression as you start taking over things and generating more income. Kind of like in the movie Scarface. But yeah, it's definitely not the end. It's definitely not the I would say the apex of the game.
Well, no, because it's definitely not. I was just saying it's more kind of like that moment where he becomes the pretty much the guy who runs the drug trade in Vice City.
Because you killed.
That is the now inciting moment for the latter half of the story. For pretty much like this is the rising action, and then you have we're getting to the tippy top of the rising action. Like this is setting everything up for the climactic end.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. Because once you pretty much take over Luis Guzman's. His character's name's Diaz. Once you take his mansion, it's literally the Scarface mansion. It's like shot for shot the Scarface mansion. Once you take that over, you're the guy now. You're now the guy, and you get to enjoy being the guy for a while and defending it a little bit, defending your newly acquired empire. And a lot of the missions kind of tailor to that while you're still cleaning up some shit. And it also builds more of that animosity between you and Vance. Because he's like, she's like, all right, you forget about me? And it's like, nah, well, now I'm the kingpin. You got to give me a minute. I got to enjoy this. And then that's pretty much the breaking point between you two.
Because now he thinks that it's a fair point too. Because he pledges allegiance to Tommy, and then Tommy finally gets everything that he wants, and Lance is like, what the fuck? You said you would help me get these guys back.
Oh yeah, Tommy is a bad man. He is not he's not like an anti-hero. You actually play a bad guy throughout this whole thing. Like the other GTAs, you can probably find some like light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe some. Tommy Vercetti is a shithead. Like he's just a straight up bad dude. There's nothing good about him. He's not loyal. His one friend, the Ken Rosenberg character. He's based off of Sean Penn's character in Carlito's Way, who's the same haircut, same drug addiction. He gets a crazy drug addiction. Tommy just cuts him loose, like, nah, you're getting high on my supply, and you're no longer of use to me. And yeah, Tommy's not a good dude. There's nothing to like about him. He's just sometimes fun to be that guy. And he doesn't get his like at the end of Scarface, because Scarface gets shot to shit at the end. Tommy Vercetti lives. Spoiler alert. Its game came out in 2002, so it's not my problem.
Well, that's what I kind of figured with everything that we're talking about on here. Like every game for the summer PS2 is going to be a spoiler alert. Excuse me. Are there any missions leading up to that switch where he runs the drug trade that you can think, or any like plot lines or anything like that are like you think are like really good or really interesting, or that were some of your personal favorites?
Yeah, there's definitely it's one of the the last interactions you have with Danny Trejo's character. So he's like a chef in like this rundown part of like this Cuban part of town, predominantly dominated by the Cuban gang and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure, I don't want to misremember, but there's definitely a mission where you're one of the very few enjoyable times you're in a watercraft in any of these GTA games, because it's awful mechanics to hit a wave and your shit just goes sideways. Like, unless it's Wave Runner, I don't want to play any water games. They're not fun. Water levels suck in Mario. The water tracks in Mario Kart suck. It's not fun. All right, Waterworld was a stupid movie. I don't care. No, Finding Nemo. Fuck that movie. That movie sucks too. Fuck.
So much hostility towards water.
Just angry. No, but there's definitely this mission where you get to edge out the competition. Like some competition starts to creep up on you, and like they kind of have your number, and you just do like the supply. Like you just destroy the enemy, the rival's supply in its entirety, and there's like that's the end of that gang. That shuts them down completely, and it's fun. Weirdly enough, like that's like I had a favorite mission, and I pretty much when I got to that point, preparing for this game or for this episode, I stopped playing it because I just got my favorite. There's like such tongue-in-cheek band called Love Fist, and it's just a play on that glam metal where all they do is just drugs and have sex, and like that's their whole shtick. But there is one mission where like you're their chauffeur, and it's such a goofy mission, but there's a bomb in their limousine, and you're driving, but it's like literally the premise of the movie Speed. Like this game just ripped movie after movie, and so you can't go too fast, you can't go too slow in this limousine, and of course they crank up the traffic when that mission starts because you never see any cars on the road, and all of a sudden now you got to not hit shit, and otherwise the car blows up. But in the back it's these 4 band members like the Rolling Stones or like Motley Crue, high on drugs, trying to just defuse this bomb while you're just driving around Vice City. And it's just very it's just the banter and the dialogue. I think there's like 6,000 lines of dialogue in this game, I think I remember reading. And it's just, I don't know, it's just shit like that. Like, they're more memorable to me than like edging out gang leaders and stuff, because like I've seen that movie. Yeah. But and then in like the final fight scene is, it's Scarface, the same scene, how Scarface ends, just Tommy Vercetti walks away. I don't know. It's just, this game is literally just, I love movies more than I like video games, and to me this was just playing a movie, and I was like, hey, I know that movie, and then years later playing it again, I catch other things that I notice that are movie references. Trying to think of one. So like there's RC missions in the game, which are the worst on Earth. You have to fly like,
I saw a lot of complaints about those.
They don't get better. Like they do that shit in the San Andreas too, and they're even worse. But the name of the company that makes all the toy cars and stuff is called Top Fun, and Top Gun came out, and this movie takes 86, so it's just things like that I didn't notice as a kid because I didn't like Top Gun as a kid, and I still don't like Top Gun. You put that in the list with Finding Nemo, but yeah, there's so many nods to it. It's just, I think that's bad writing in today's standards. I think there's just a rip off stuff and make it a spoof. We kind of talked about that, before the episode started. Like spoofs are kind of they're very dated. But like it definitely picks like the most iconic of movies to like spoof off of in a way that's just like, all right, this game's very self-aware.
It's also a little bit safer to do to be tongue-in-cheek and be not topical but referential when it's references that when you're making references to something years prior, like at that point when that game came out, the 80s were at least 12 years like gone at that point, right? So at least 12 years. And I mean, the year it's based off of is 86, so you're looking at like 16 years. So at that point, like a lot of that pop culture stuff has been more solidified at that point. So you could make references like Indiana Jones and play the whole thing up to Scarface, because movies like that now aren't just considered like contemporary, they're considered classics.
True,
so
that's true.
It's easier when you make references like that. It's a lot easier when you set the game in an older time period, because anything that is most likely something that has helped, like if not withstood this test of time, withstood it enough that a few people know about it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. It's like you said, they're definitely picking iconic things that tongue in cheek, and not necessarily like iconic things from that iconic movie that you might get. It's like it's just a big net. Like, hey, Top Gun? Here's Top Fun. You fly a plane. And stuff
one thing
like that.
One thing I did find that was kind of funny, just a little Easter egg that I was looking up some like Easter egg stuff online. Apparently at 20, if you wait till like at 2300, I don't know if that's in-game time or if that's like real world time, but the DT hotel will light up. I don't know if it's
like
DT
a penis
stands for down. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a penis, and then the fountain goes off in the top center, so it looks like it's just splurting everywhere.
And it's stuff like that I didn't catch as a kid. It was like way later on. I'm watching like a YouTube series of like Easter eggs to find. Like I found one as a kid because I remember being in like I think it was in a PlayStation magazine or someone told me. But another obvious reference to Scarface. There's an apartment you can go in, and you go in the apartment and you find the chainsaw on the bloody wall. If you haven't seen the movie Scarface, there's a guy in the movie gets cut up by a chainsaw in the bathroom. This game leans more into that. I mean, that's where you go. You can literally go get a chainsaw is one of the weapons in the game, And yeah, I mean, it's just stuff like I found that as a kid by accident. But there's so many like Rockstar. Just like I would love that be that guy who's in charge of just budgeting. Like, all right, we can get the game out. We can add more real content. Nah, 400 Easter eggs. Let's do this.
Well, they literally had an Easter egg in a literal Easter egg. There's a window that you can just like this wall that you can just jump through. Like you just clip straight through it, and you land in this room, and it's just this chocolate Easter egg.
Yeah, it's just a happy Easter or something like that. I think.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just this little tiny thing. And one of the ones that the one guy looked up, that the video I saw on YouTube, I thought was like super cool. Was there's these two stores. I don't know where they are at in the city. I'd have to like look it up again, but essentially it was like it basically implied that it was doing like a Sweeney Todd type of thing. Like one business was like killing people and the other business was kind of using the bones and meat and shit like that.
That's
like,
cool.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one, but I believe it. I mean, it's the Rockstar. They're just filthy with that kind of stuff. One of my favorite ones is you buy this. One of the properties you guys get to buy in the game is called Sunshine Auto. Not a big deal. No plot devices behind that. But that's where you get the first taste. There's a car that's based off the DeLorean in it. It's called the Deluxo, I think it is. Yeah, Deluxo. I'm looking at it right now. It's Deluxo. And you know, that's my favorite car in the game. I loved Back to the Future as a kid, first two at least. And you know, I just drove around it pretending I was fucking Marty McFly and shit like that. And it was just, again, I created my own fun in a game where I'm supposed to be just blowing up stuff and all that. But it's just like, that's my favorite car. Like, that game, Vice City, was the first time to introduce motorcycles, and you know, just racing around on a motorcycle at, you know, what seemed like great graphics at the time was so like, it just felt like the wind was there. Even though just Vice City is like, I hate that it's about like something so horrible that I'm the expert to talk about it, but there's just so much more I love about it that's not necessarily the hookers and cocaine. I mean, that's a good part too. That's a good Christmas, but like the other parts are really good too.
Well, so real quick, I did look up that what I was talking about with like that body thing. It's at two different businesses, the Funeraria Romero and the Carnicerio Romero. I butchered that. I'm so sorry, everybody. But basically, the Funeraria one is an undertaker business, and the other one is a butcher business. And so it's implied that the corpses are used in a nearby butcher shop called, you know, Carnicerio Romero, as the shop has an arm, a brain, and a box reading human organ for transplant on display in the window. This is further reinforced by the fact that the skeleton in the open grave behind the funeral Romero has an arm missing. I
didn't know that. Yeah, I don't think I ever found that. I know in that one of those two, there's a Bela Lugosi vampire portrait in one of them, and it's defaced, and it says like, I think it says something like derogatory against vampires or something like that.
That actually is that's inside the shop at the funeral parlor.
Yeah, I remember that one as a kid too. I didn't get that joke till way later when someone on YouTube had to explain it to me. But I remember seeing it as a kid. I was like, is this supposed to be funny? Like, I remember even as a kid, like the game was self-aware, and they're like, I was supposed to laugh at certain things, but I didn't know what I was supposed to laugh at. I just remember seeing them. I do remember Bela, because I knew who Bela Lugosi was. You know, I was always a horror fan.
Blah. Blah, I want to suck your blood.
I want to do cocaine.
I'm going to do a bump off the hooker's ass. Blah.
Only at night, though. He'll explode in the daytime.
only at night. So, I mean, that the end of the game, we've been kind of jumping through the story, kind of getting off, like, you know, jumping off the random side topics and whatnot. But to kind of cap off the story, the game ends with Tommy in a shootout with his former boss, Sonny Forelli. Ends with a shootout, and it's like we were saying before, it's pretty much the end of Scarface, but unlike Scarface, Tommy doesn't die.
Right.
I think you can even use the gun from Scarface, I think, at the end part. I think if you have it or something like that. And it's just, you know, you fight a couple waves of guys, and then you kill, you know, the Sonny Forelli, and that's the end of the game.
It's really easy.
Is it?
Yeah, and it's annoying because like GTA 3's ending is like really hard because you have to like fight a helicopter. Like you have to chase it throughout the town to fight it, and it's super hard. And then San Andreas, the last mission of that when you're playing as CJ, I think it's like this train mission. I can't remember the specifics of it, but I also remember it being like awfully hard. And then I remember this one just being like a joke. You just mow people down, like the shit you've been doing the whole game anyway. and it's like, oh, okay, and then you're the guy, you the guy.
So yeah, that's pretty much all it for the story. Then, is there anything else that you want to talk about the story though before we move on?
No, not really. I mean, if you've seen Scarface and Carlito's Way, it's just that's the whole story. I mean, there's side missions and there's a lot of characters just to enjoy. I would even just recommend just watching the cutscenes on YouTube of every mission. You'll get the whole story from that. But it's not really that deep.
Someone did a supercut of those where it's like a 3-hour long movie or some shit like that.
Oh, well, that's kind of cool. I might have to check that out.
I think you can find. I think you can find it on YouTube. There's like a supercut of. I think it's called like Grand Theft Auto Vice City the movie, and I don't know if they like sprinkle in a little bits of gameplay to kind of have like some connective tissue to the different cutscenes, but who knows?
That's pretty cool.
I love stuff like that. I love it when they do stuff like that. There's that's how I. What is it? I didn't want to play Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories for the Game Boy Advance / the remake they did for the PS2 because that game system I absolutely despise. It's like, have you played any of the Kingdom Hearts games?
I played the first one. It was okay.
I love the series, but the first one has some pretty stiff controls, not going to lie. But the first game, it's kind of like an action RPG. You're manually hitting the button to attack. You gotta choose when you want to use magic and this and that. Chain of Memories, it's a card game, and it's like the moves you do to the enemy are based off of which cards you draw. And I'm sure a lot of people loved that but I don't like card games. Like I don't like have to figure out an entire system just to be able to attack a character. If the whole game is a card game, that's different. But I mean, if like the purpose of a game is to be a card game, freaking what's the Blizzard one? I'm blanking.
Oh, Hearthstone, yeah.
If it's like that, even though it's not something I'd want to play, I could be like, okay, I can get into this because I have to understand the mechanics of this card game. But this was a Kingdom Hearts game that suddenly became a card game, and so what I was used to with Kingdom Hearts is just being able to go in and attack and kind of like plan out my strategy using what magic I had. But no, you can't plan strategy. You just get a random deck of cards, and then you have some control over building that deck, but it's, from what I remember, it wasn't that, like, I didn't have that much control, but it's also been a minute, so I could be way off with that. So if someone can correct me if I'm wrong with that, but I don't remember there being a whole lot of control over what cards you can add or remove from your deck, which kind of defeats the purpose then if you don't feel like you're in control of your own deck.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of seems like those games you just put on like auto run, and I know there's a lot of games that play like that, but I know you're confident. I couldn't play that. Not especially expecting coming from like a combat action oriented game to that. I mean, I get you want to experiment and try stuff. Looking at you, Zelda 2, but it's some things just don't make the cut.
But yeah, so I'm with you on that. Certain things you're expecting one thing, you get the other, just ruins the whole experience for you. But yeah, so with some quick development information, this was going to be an add-on to Grand Theft Auto 3 originally. But after, developing it more and enjoying it more, they decided to, branch the concept out into its own standalone game, and that's how it became Vice City. Which I thought was kind of interesting, that it was going to be just an add-on to like an expansion pack pretty much to Grand Theft Auto 3.
Yeah, I think there was like a 1 month turnaround time. I think when GTA 3 came out, like a month or two later is when they actually was like real deep into making this game. Like they were just like cranking this. They were ready to go with this game.
Mm-hmm. And it's cool because then it became like a labor of love for them. It wasn't just, all right, here's the next project. It was something that was going to be just something minor, and they enjoyed it so much. I think that kind of stands to prove why so many people love Vice City so much. There is a lot of love poured into it by the team. From the vibe I get, at least, there's a lot of love poured into it by the team that made it.
I also think a big part of it too is it has an amazing soundtrack. Like GTA 3 had a lot of songs made just for the game, and so they don't really stand out too much. But this is like the 80s hits. Like we're talking like I can only imagine how much money they had to pay to get some of these songs. Maybe back then in 2002 when video games weren't really as big as they are now, maybe that the royalty check had to be that big. But like Michael Jackson's in it, like Rick James is in it, Motley Crue's like that's just something I can remember off the top of my head. But it's a huge they have like
Hall and Oates in it too.
I don't know, but anything in the 80s came out is in this game. Phil Collins is actually in the game. Like, you can actually see a Phil Collins concert. I forget how you did it, but there's Phil Collins in the game. Like, Phil Collins as Phil Collins is in the game, and there's like a virtual concert he does. Surreal. It's like one song, I think, but and the sound, like, it sounds so catchy. Like 80s songs, it was just 80s pop. Like Madonna's in it and stuff like that. So it's just like all these big name stars. I mean, I think they came with the complete package. I mean, I don't think it ever gets I like talking about like video game like soundtracks and stuff like that, and I think when you use this kind of game, it's like cheating a bit because all these songs are great anyway. They're not like original scores or anything, but what they chose, I think, should be commended because the songs go so well with the missions play. Because like, regardless of what radio station, you can change the radio station in these games. Regardless of what radio station you're listening to, it'll change to an appropriate song, like the Top Gun song. I don't know what the name of the song is, but the song that plays in Top Gun that everybody knows, like "Push It to the Limit."
The danger.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking of Danger
Zone.
Zone.
I think it's the same song.
Highway.
Yeah, that one. I think it's in that game.
Danger Zone.
But like stuff like that, like they just cue up the music, and again, the reason why I love the game makes me feel like I'm playing a movie. Like like it's that chase scene, and it feels like a chase scene because I think music plays a big part of that. And like you said, it's a labor of love on their end because they could have just went with some original stuff that nobody cares about again, but. They shelled out whatever. I don't know how much money they made. I'd love to know how they had this budget, but
you know what? Let me try to Google it. Grand Theft Auto Vice City music budget. Let me just see if anything comes up. Oh, $5 million.
Wow, that's a lot for a video game.
Wait, hold on. That might have been for the budget for the whole game.
All right. That's. I didn't think it'd be that much, but I mean, there's 7. I think. Eventually the game came out with like CDs that you could buy or vinyl albums, whatever, for each radio station because each radio station, was literally like 16 or so songs, maybe 12 songs. And there was like 8 radio stations, I think. So that's even just say 8 times 10, 80 songs that they had to license out. I mean, I can only imagine how much that adds up to, but I mean, some probably not so much. Not all of them are like hits, but I mean, there's a whole station of like alternative, like. I think it's like Cuban or Havana music. So I don't know any of them, but I mean, they could be hits too. I mean, I never listen to that radio station because I don't understand what they're saying, but they could be hits.
I don't listen to radio in general anymore. So like, I always found it like interesting with radio stuff, like on GTA. Like I seldom listen to it. It's weird.
You just drive around silently?
No, I don't drive silently, but like I don't pay attention enough to the soundtrack. It's weird. I don't know. And it's not to say that I don't like it. It's just for some reason it was always hard for me. I guess because they gave you so many options, I'd want to listen to everything and be like, oh, what's this station playing and how many songs are on this? And so because of that, I would end up being paralyzed by choice and not do anything.
That makes sense. I'll give you that.
It was just kind of, and that's why it was just kind of weird and it's not a bad thing. Like I'm not like blaming that. It's just,
I thought you were the type of guy like just like you gotta play the game, you just put the TV on mute. You're like, nah. No. I'm in the game. I don't want to hear no. I got no time for sound effects.
I can't do that. I mean, I would lose my cred for all the composers I've interviewed. It's a great game. I haven't listened to your soundtrack. I just play the game mute.
Does that soundtrack have subtitles?
I mean, this game you could. I mean, if you had all the different, if you had everything subtitled. But okay, so we've talked about the story. We've talked about the soundtrack. Anything to say about the graphics, really?
They don't really hold up.
No, they don't.
Yeah, that's one thing I will have to say. Like the proportions on Tommy Vercetti, like when he's running, like he just has like these like just orangutan swinging arms and his hands. Back in the day when they didn't know how to do fingers in any video game, you just had these like clumps. For paws. Mm-hmm. The people back then they didn't do people well. Cars are fine, and like cartoonish characters, they were fine. But the realism, I don't know. I hate the crap on it, but it doesn't really hold up well. It's not good. But I think this game does a great job distracting you from that by being like a sunny like Miami City. So you're looking at all these neon lights and people are kind of getting hit with that fluorescent light a bit. So I think it hides it. But taking a step back, there were way better games that looked way better in that PS2 era. It just, I don't know, graphically it's not great, but the cars look cool. I'll give it to the cars. Cars were fun, and their damage mechanics were fine. I mean,
they're a little over the top for my liking, but they made it entertaining to say the least.
Yeah, I would say so. I don't know, my car flipping over needs to explode and all like a giant fireball, but I get it.
I think overall I agree with you. Like the graphics don't hold up, but also like one of the hardest things, it's weird. One of the hardest things for people to draw, animate, 3D model, render, whatever, is the human hand. The human hand is just such a weird shape because it's so hard to make it proportion realistically. That's almost why you see in a lot of cartoons they only have like 4 fingers or like 3 fingers or something like that. They don't even bother drawing the 5th finger because it's just like we can't make it look realistically proportional to the rest of the model, the rest of the character. I also wonder how much of that goes into like Uncanny Valley territory, where it's like if we made the hand realistic in terms of proportion, maybe it just looks like uncomfortably large, so it makes everyone dislike how the model looks. True. Or something like that. I don't know. That's all just like speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised if something along those lines was kind of true in with an Uncanny Valley sense. But I don't really have much else to say about the game. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you really wanted to dive into?
Honestly, no. Just the biggest thing to me is just it feels like a movie, and it shows with its characters. I think for its, I think it was the best selling game of its year. I think I remember reading that preparation for this episode. But if even that's not the case, I know GTA as a whole is like the second greatest selling franchise, I think, or something like that. Just because of the most recent GTA, but they do story really well. If you're not turned on by the sandbox thing or the little goofy side missions, they're all, I think, especially Vice City, it's worth a shot. Just to even go through it, just front to back. Don't do the collectibles, other silly shit. But I love it. To this day, I still love it. I was very excited to do this episode. It was a no brainer for me when you're looking for people to come on and do this stuff. I was like, I already knew what game I want. There's plenty of games to choose from, but without even like looking it up, I was like, oh, Vice City, 100%.
It's funny because not a lot of people actually. There's been a couple games I've been surprised that people haven't written down more. Vice City being one of them. Metal Gear Solid as well. I mentioned it in the last episode that was released at the time we're recording this. By the time this is released, it's going to be, I don't know, September. So like it's like it's a little bit ahead, but yeah, it's just, I mentioned it, Metal Gear Solid 2. I was surprised how few. The only person that asked for it was my friend, was Erica, and that was it.
Maybe it's just
like, how is that possible?
Maybe like the fear of like everyone thinks they're going to pick that one, so maybe people try to pick like their second or third pick and like go that route.
I was just going to say that's why I told everyone to give me their top 5, so that way we wouldn't run into that situation. So if maybe their number 1 pick was Metal Gear Solid, well, they don't have to worry about it because they have 2 or 3. They have like 4 others to choose from.
Did I give you 5? I don't even think I gave you 5. I think I told you
I don't
Vice City.
I don't know. I forget. I have it all down here. I actually have to figure out one more episode. I have to book I have the entire list all sorted out except for one, and I have to figure that one out real bad because it's coming up soon. It's due out in August, so I kind of got to figure that out like sooner rather than later. But anyway, so James, thank you for joining me for this episode of the Summer of PS2 on Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
I found my. Can I tell you my 5 picks that I picked?
Yes,
I found it. I pulled it up real quick. I think I sent it on Facebook. So I did. I said Red Faction 2, Simpsons Road Rage, which I mentioned earlier in this episode, any Tony Hawk, and then I put next to Vice City, number 1 pick. Will sing every song though. I have not sung a single song. So I'm a liar.
Well, no, you sang. Didn't you hum something? I forget now.
I think I was doing the Flock of Seagulls song before we recorded.
That's what it was. That's close enough.
And then Star Wars Battlefront 2 was my other one. So, but Vice City, I was like, I knew how to be this one.
And I'm glad that you picked it, because like one of the reasons I've been enjoying this series is just I'm getting to try out games that either wouldn't interest me, or if they did interest me, I never really got to play. This would be falling into like, this interests me, but I never really got to play. But at the same time, I'm not looking to play it. It's kind of like just a passing curiosity. So I'm glad I was able to sit down and really try this game out, give it the good old college try. And it was fine. I don't think Rockstar games are my cup of tea. Though I will say I did play Red Dead Redemption 2 earlier this year, and I loved that game to pieces. I loved it so much more than Red Dead 1. It was so good, even if the controls were dated as hell, but the game was super fun. But like you were saying, though, you can kind of see it in that game specifically. Their storytelling has gotten so good in the series, or Rockstar storytelling in general is just very well done.
Yeah, and to me, that's I like to play like mindless games where story's not even a thing, and I just like games like Civilization and Minecraft. I love playing those games as well, but I do enjoy like games where it's just I like that movie experience. Like I've never played an Uncharted game, but I get the appeal. Like, and I can't wait for that movie to come out,
dude. You'd like it.
So I like that. I like that cinematic feel to games, but like I don't know. It's just one of the things. I think Vice City it's already been done in like 5 other movies, but to me, being those movies growing up until this day are still some of my favorite movies. So Vice City I think holds like a little bit higher like nostalgia power in my heart than other games will. Just because it just connects a lot of dots for me. I was like, oh man, I love these movies and I love being that guy. I mean, he's a shithead, but
well, those movies, but like this game also would introduce his kids. I mean, also to hookers and blow, but also to
start them young.
But no, it introduces them to that genre, like all 80s music. I remember when I was doing some research for this, I don't even think I was doing research. I just like Hall & Oates. I was looking up Hall & Oates music on YouTube, and there's a lot of comments saying like, oh man, who else got introduced to this from Grand Theft Auto Vice City? I was like, holy shit, like this is like that. It's done something. It's like it's helped kids discover new music. I mean, granted, it was kids at the time,
sure,
but still, it was kids discovered this genre of music that was so far, not genre, but this decade of music that was foreign to them at the time. And I would also argue that once they kind of looked into it and they kind of remembered Grand Theft Auto, maybe looked into it and be like, oh, it's based off a lot of these movies. Maybe I should check these movies out, type of thing. Because the music is easier to like find,
sure,
but the movie references aren't so heavy-handed that you're going to, if you don't know what the movie it's based off, like at the end with the Scarface ending, if you don't know what Scarface is, you're just going to think it's that ending. It has no
right.
meaning to you other than that.
Yeah, you could literally tell someone like you could play this game first, and then they can watch Scarface, and if you just tell them this is Vice City the movie, they'd believe it. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you know one before the other one, you'll think the other one might be a ripoff. I mean, some people are intuitive know like this movie looks old as shit, but I mean, I'm just saying like like the plot lines alone can do that.
But you were saying also like Grand Theft Auto is one of the highest selling series. You're at number 1 on the PS2 is San Andreas. Number 4 is Vice City. Number 6 is Grand Theft Auto 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. I owned all 3 of them, and they were just, and everyone, they were so in your face. I mean, PS2 I think was just like just in your face. Like what are the other what games are 2 and 3? I'm just curious what was between the 2 GTAs.
Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec is number 2, and Gran Turismo 4 is number 3.
Okay. So cars dominate the first 4 spots.
Number 5 is Final Fantasy X.
Okay.
And then number 7, right below Grand Theft Auto 3, is Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty.
Yeah.
And then underneath that is Final Fantasy 12. And it's tied. 8 is a tie between Final Fantasy 12 and Tekken 5, both selling 6 million copies. And then number 10 is Kingdom Hearts.
That's impressive. I mean, just for an American game, or I should say like a Western game, to do that well on a console that's very heavily dominated in the East, to sell that many units.
But the PlayStation was really what reinvigorated the third party market in the US. Because it started with the Genesis a little bit, but Nintendo still had some pretty strict anti-compete practices and bullshit like that. But the PlayStation 1 is where Western developers could really sink their teeth in. And they also didn't have nearly as many constrictions. Because even if you didn't have any like anti-compete clauses or anti-compete bullshit from Nintendo, where they would like threaten to stop you from being able to publish on their consoles, they would do stuff like that. But even if that wasn't there, you had to buy your cartridges from Nintendo. And then you would have to still have to get all the manufacturing done to flash all the information to the cartridges. And apparently the amounts that you could buy from Nintendo weren't necessarily realistic. It was either an obscenely large amount or not enough, so there wasn't anything for a nice middle ground. So you would have to make sure that your game was either a hit or do a limited run type of thing of it. And it was not conducive for third-party developers, because if you say you started out and you made a small game and you had success with its small run, say you wanted to order more, well, then you have to choose, well, is this game going to sell a whole shitload more after that first run, or do I want to do another one and just kind of bog down the market and sell less?
Sounds like Nintendo was the Tommy Vercetti of video games, kind of just cutting everybody out, man. And supply and demand. I'm looking at you, Nintendo, you villain.
So then when Sony came in with the PlayStation and you had the CD as their primary form of, distribution for games, it was cheaper to manufacture. Discs are so much more cheap than cartridges, and they could hold more data. So it was a win-win. So that's why, Squaresoft then became Square Enix, but Squaresoft jumped ship over to Sony with Final Fantasy VII, because they're like, we don't have to fucking be like castrated by this tiny, I forget how many megs. We can
spell out the word fire.
It was less than 100 megs on an N64 cartridge usually, if I remember correctly. And, CDs could hold 700 megs. So you would literally get over 7 times the amount of data space. And it wasn't even a competition. So the PlayStation, pretty much to compete with Nintendo, since Nintendo had fortified its foot in the market so much, they just made it super easy to develop for, super easy to publish and distribute for, and that really helped them out. And that's also why you would even see, that's why PlayStation did the thing where if they had a super good seller, then they had, the best of series, I forget what it was called exactly, but
like the red band across the top.
Yes, exactly. On PS1, it was a green band. Greatest hits, that's what it is. And so then they would re-release the same game, but at a marked down price. So if it was $60 for, Crash Bandicoot 1 when it came out, maybe 2 years later, they would re-release it for like $30. So the game would sell more copies after its initial run, and they would be able to kind of pump life back into it and get a little bit extra money out of it. So they would do shit like that. And on top of that, since it was so cheap, it would allow games that wouldn't normally have a big audience, like Pa Rappa the Rapper or like Jammer Lammy, those music games. You couldn't bank on those on on something else. And they were only $40 on release, I believe. I think it was cheaper for those games. So they allowed more experimental titles because they were so fluid with it. And because of that, I would argue US and Western developers really were able to get a foothold into the Japanese market space more so than before. Because Grand Theft Auto got its start on the PS1, and Medal of Honor started on the PS1 and stuff like that. Like there's a ton of Western games that got a start on the PlayStation 1. And I feel like PS2 is where Western developers finally figured out like game design, in a sense. I shouldn't say finally figured out, but like game design for consoles from Western developers hit their stride. Because it was at that time, it would in the PS2 it was more than just Naughty Dog and Insomniac making killer software. It was a bunch of things.
Yeah, they definitely had. I mean, whatever that company was that made like Twisted Metal, I know that company was huge for a while.
Yes,
like Neversoft did all the Tony Hawk games and Activision. There's that. Yeah, you're right. And they were all like California based companies too. So yeah, I guess that's a good way to look at it.
That was a really long tangent. I don't even know if any of that is correct.
Bullshit.
I
know some of the make up shit.
Okay. Yeah,
Bush did 9/11. If they made it to that point, they deserve to hear that. But I will say one thing about this PS2 thing you're doing. PS2 was the first time that I felt comfortable taking apart my system to fix it when its little laser spindle stopped working. That was like my first introduction that these consoles weren't forever, and they weren't made as great as Nintendo consoles. Because I mean, my N64 fell down the steps. I can't tell you how many times, like taking it to friends' houses and stuff. But I remember one day, like my PS2 just quit. It just would not boot games, and I remember just there was no sending it out. The warranty was expired at the time, and just finding like a PlayStation magazine, or maybe it just been the internet at the time, but having to take it apart and taking out like the laser and resetting the spindle and having to like to tinker with it just to get it to work again for maybe another week or so, and until I had to reset it and do it again. It definitely got me prepared for the red ring of death when 360 hit and subsequent systems failed me. But PS2 was very very durable for what it tried to do, but I just
and it's a console that really kind of set a lot of standards. I love the PlayStation 2, man. I mean, I could talk about it for ages, but where can the people find you on the internet? Where can they find you on social media and whatnot?
You can find my OnlyFans and Pornhub page. No, you can find
that's where I punch hookers.
I am the hooker. They just punch me. You got to pay money to do it.
That's your OnlyFans. People pay to punch you.
Yeah, that sounds horrible. My mom would be so upset. You can find me, and I have a co-host named Brian. We do a podcast called Know Geeks Allowed. You can find it wherever you get podcasts. We're everywhere.
That is spelled KNOW.
Oh, yeah.
No Geeks Allowed.
I'm glad you do that because I never do that.
I feel like because your podcast name is such a good pun. I guess it's called a pun, but I really like the name of your podcast. But because of that, you have to spell it. Otherwise, people are going to spell it like NO or something.
But people are going to know I don't know how to spell.
Well, you don't tell them.
No, I just got to get a script. Oh, I can't read it. Damn, I'm screwed no matter what. But yeah, you can find us at KNOW, No Geeks Allowed, wherever you get podcasts, Twitter, Instagram, your local library. I'm going to be buying some DVDs or stealing them or something.
All right, fair enough. As usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. If you want to reach out, you can email me, stillloadingcontact@gmail.com, or you can also check out my website, stillloadingpodcast.com. If you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do that. The easiest way, and it would only cost a moment of your time, is just to give it a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use. That helps get the show out there and helps more people find it. If you want to support the show monetarily, you can check out Patreon. It's patreon.com/stillloadingpod. Even just $1 a month will help grow the show. And finally, the most important... Oh my God, I fucking do this all the time. Check out the network both James and I are a part of, the Podbeard Network. Both No Geeks Allowed and myself are part of the network, so go check out podbeardnetwork.com to check out all the different shows. And now, the most important shout out, the nonprofit organization I'm partnered with, the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a nonprofit, like I said. It is dedicated to putting video games and video game consoles into the hands of children receiving inpatient care at hospitals, so you can check them out at bitbybitfoundation.org, and that should do it for me. So, James, thank you for joining me. This was a super fun episode.
You man. I love anytime you want to talk about some silly shit like this. Anytime you want to talk PS2.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
And you guys have been doing that those dud video game movies, and I'm hoping that, like, once you guys start back up again, because you've been on hiatus for a minute, once you guys start back up again, I call Double Dragon.
Oh, definitely, dude. Double Dragon's on there. I mean, just whatever anybody wants to talk about, they're all awful. So it's just how much you want to subject yourself to. So I can't wait to have you back on.
All right, and that should do it for this episode, and I will see you all next time.